Mazel tov. Only good things, and may you have success, and only no happiness. Okay, amen.
Yeah.
There you go with your blessings again.
I'm a
There you
bracha
go.
guy. I love brachas. I don't know why you're so anti-blessing. I don't know.
I'm very anti-blessing. Like when Rebbes come to South Florida, everyone's like, "Let's go, get a bracha from the Biala Rebbe from Miami." Come on,
Amen.
man.
Yeah. Even if you don't believe in it, it feels special. I remember. There was a Cohen who got married, right? And he was a young guy. He was like 20 years old, and he wasn't really religious. And the Rav said, "You know what? Why don't you go get a bracha from the Cohen?" And he laid hands on me, and he gave me a bracha for success and happiness. And it's just, you feel something. There's just something that happens. I can't explain it. You get so energized, you get so pumped, ready to go for it.
Being that I try to package my beliefs and hand them over to other people, I think this is things that hurt Judaism. I think what we should be presenting to the world is a more purposeful, a more meaningful Judaism than some belief system that encourages you to go to holy men to receive blessings. It doesn't make any sense. It's like he's going to put on you some sort of spiritual aura to protect you. I mean, what if people can't drive to him? God's going to allow them to suffer just because they can't make it to the Rebbe. It just sounds silly. It just sounds silly.
I have a question for Rabbi Asher. 2 questions, okay? I don't need the answer for this. It's kind of a yes or no. Do you believe in Gilgul?
No.
Gilgul isn't true? Okay.
It's a little more complex than that. Do I want it to be true? I do want it to be true.
Yeah.
I hope it's true. So Gilgul means reincarnation.
Right.
But does the Torah teach it? No. That's it. Now, again, do I want it to be true? There's a lot of things that I want to be true, but I won't say Torah teaches.
I was wondering in the aspect of what compels someone like myself or others to want to convert. Is there something innately pre-existing that drives person A and not person B to want to convert?
Mm-hmm. The same thing that draws one person to live a life of decency and philanthropy and drives another one to be a criminal. I think it's people blunting their moral compass, choosing to do good over evil or vice versa. There's an internal struggle within all of us, and that's how God measures us. I don't think that because of the notion of Gilgul, of reincarnation, the mystics teach that people who want to convert to Judaism are basically reincarnated Jews, Gentiles with Jewish souls who are being drawn back to Torah. I think that notion waters down the Torah to think that it's not powerful enough. The life-changing instructions in Torah are not powerful enough to make you want to choose it, but that you have to be drawn to it because of a Jewish soul. Okay. Again, the notion of a Jewish soul was invented by Kabbalists. It doesn't appear in the Talmud. It doesn't appear in the Torah. It doesn't appear in Tanakh. So that's why I don't subscribe to it. Just because it doesn't really make sense. One, it makes Judaism look silly, irrational, and purposeless, and resemble other belief systems out there that are also subpar.
Okay. It does say in the text that you always love the quote about how we treat, what's the procedure about accepting converts, about, teach them some of the light mitzvahs, not to, scare them away. It does say when a convert comes to convert, and a lot of people say, well, the reason why it doesn't say when a goy comes to convert, the language in the law is because that person was always a convert to begin with. Right. You ever heard that argument before? It doesn't. The way it's written that a Gerim convert comes to convert. It doesn't say when a goy comes to convert.
It says Ger Hamit Gayer. It's because Ger means stranger. It doesn't necessarily mean convert. And for sure in the Torah, it doesn't mean convert all the time.
Devil's advocate, I know you don't like that, but to break the chops a little bit. Why wouldn't it say goy? Why wouldn't it get rid of? Why didn't it say when a goy comes to convert?
Rabbinic literature is not written by God. Rabbinic literature is written by rabbis. Okay, now I'm a rabbinic Jew. I believe in halakha, but only because they chose to use one word over the other does not create a metaphysical reality. So only because they use the word ger which correctly means stranger. Now, the notion of ger hagar in the Torah does mean a full convert. The rabbis later call that a ger sedek. Fine. Only because they chose to use that word doesn't mean that this person has a Jewish soul and they're coming back to Judaism because of that soul. You're building too much off the words that the rabbis chose to use. They could have used the word nochri. It would still mean the same. But being that the notion of reincarnation didn't appear till much, much later, shows that when that statement was made in Yevamot and in the Rambam of Surabia, this notion didn't exist in rabbinic Judaism. I mean, the Rambam didn't believe in reincarnation. The Talmud doesn't mention reincarnation. Why should we think that the rabbis in the Talmud who used those terms set up the concept for some later Kabbalists to run with? It just doesn't make any sense. Okay. Reincarnation is a later notion, even though it floated around. Rav Sadia Gaon said in his time then, he predated the Rambam, that anyone who believes in reincarnation has adopted a non-Jewish belief. It wasn't mainstream in rabbinic literature like it became after that. In the works of, Rashi mentions it, the Ramban mentions it. So this is why I don't believe that ger means that. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And my second question was this: do you think is there value in conversion to in conservatism as opposed to orthodoxy? Are conservative Jews? Do you see them as also Jewish, or are they like lesser Jews?
It depends. The understanding is that the only real conservative Jew is a conservative rabbi, because most people who go to conservative synagogues are really Reform, and most people who go to Reform are really atheists. They just go because it's like a Semitic heritage festival every Shabbat. The tenets of conservative Judaism really doesn't violate anything with the exception of driving on Shabbat as a rule, allowing it as a rule. I mean, Orthodox synagogues, many Chabads, tolerate people driving on Shabbat. Most Chabad houses wouldn't have a minyan if they didn't allow people to drive on Shabbat, right. But don't have it in their tenet as if you can't come to shul, drive, at least to your closest synagogue and then drive back. I'm not against the notion, but it shouldn't be a rule.
Because I'm in a program of study towards conversion with conservatives, and they had the one attractive aspect to it that I found was that they had a curriculum to work with, which I thought was commendable.
Well, Orthodoxy also typically has a curriculum. I mean, some Orthodox rabbis do it very informally. They just see you around and they'll even write the conversion document, the shtar, they'll write it by hand. Right. That's how informal they are. But conservative Judaism is a lot more organized. It's a lot easier to make aliyah with a conservative conversion than it is with an Orthodox. If it's done through the rabbinical assembly, which is the rabbinic arm of the conservative movement, then every conservative synagogue will accept your conversion. Okay. Unlike an Orthodox synagogue, that depending on what synagogue you choose to attend, if you convert Satmar and then you try to go to some Dati Leomi religious Zionist synagogue, they may not accept it. Okay. Right? I mean, they're both observant, but because of politics.
But this has been very interesting.
These titles, Orthodox, conservative, they really don't mean anything. The phrase first entered the dictionary in 1851. Orthodox Jews were never called Orthodox before that. They were just observant Jews. It was a title given to them by Reform Jews to say that they were backward and not progressive. So it really doesn't matter. Conservative actually was founded as an Orthodox institution, as a modern Orthodox institution. JTS, which is the think tank, I guess the YU of the conservative movement, right, started off as an Orthodox institution. The founders of the Young Israel movement were JTS graduates, Jewish Theological Seminary. And they only really broke off. Things changed. The relationship changed in 1956 when they said that they could drive on Shabbat. And that's it. Ordaining rabbis, I'm not a fan of. Ordaining women rabbis. But there's nothing against Jewish law to do so. It's allowed. Not having a mechitza is also not a halakhic issue. That's a custom to have a mechitza. So, I mean, I appreciate a separation. But if you don't have one, you're not necessarily breaking any law. Giving women an aliyah is not prohibited. It appears in the Talmud as like kavod tzibor, that basically if your congregation doesn't like it, then you shouldn't do it, but it's not prohibited. what else? I mean, they keep kosher and they keep the holidays, and yeah. Now they just typically are not as observant as Orthodox Jews.
Right.
I don't even like the term Orthodox. I prefer orthoprax to Orthodox. I mean, Orthodox means that you have to think a certain way and believe certain things. I mean, I don't think Judaism really requires you to believe in much but God and Him giving over the Torah, right? But it requires you to do. So orthoprax, what you do, not Orthodox, what you believe. That's what we're stuck with. I don't know why Republicans are red and Democrats are blue. I mean, who came up with this whole thing? I mean, I just found out it was Tim Russert with the year 2000 to stir the Democratic Party away from any inkling of social democracy, of communism, that they labeled them blue and conservatives red, when it really should be the opposite. But yeah.
Today you're talking about orthoprax, the Orthodox that does, but it's also a lot of intent. You just can't do to do.
Why not?
For doing sake.
Why not?
Why not? Because the Talmud talks a lot about intent.
No, forget about the Talmud. In terms of like midrashim or things that are not legal.
I can't tell you the most judgmental people are Orthodox Jews. I mean, they'll every move you make, everything you say, to the little down to the T, second guess you. They'll ridicule you, condemn you, all the way down the line. I mean, let's be honest, Rob. That's what they do. It is about
we
practice.
Have to put the
it's about
teachings,
what you do.
We have to put the teachings of the Talmud aside when trying to understand what Torah initially was and the people that it was given to. Torah was meant to be lived out in an agrarian society. The Jews who lived in Israel did not really think like the Jews who compiled the Babylonian Talmud. I do acknowledge that the rabbis that appear in the Mishnah have authority that they have to be listened to, but anything metaphysical or anything spiritual that they require you to believe in could be tossed in the garbage. So you just have to do what they tell you to do in the collective, i.e. how to keep ceremonial laws. The Torah itself, we always have to make a distinction between the rabbis and the Torah, even though we have a command, Deuteronomy chapter 17, to listen to the judges in the court. The Torah still carries more water here. It carries more weight. So according to the Torah, it seems the Torah doesn't really require you to believe in much outside of God himself. And what he did for you in Mount Sinai, creation, I would say, is also a tenet of our belief system to a certain extent, and that he gave us instructions to live by. Apart from that, even, heck, I'll go as far as to say that monotheism, as it's understood today, is more of a developed idea. Right? It's just because it doesn't appear in such a fashion, in such a clear fashion, compared to how it appears in Mor Nevuchim and books that lay down the philosophical framework of modern-day Judaism. I mean, modern-day Judaism is really nowadays built off of the Rambam, mainly the Rambam's understanding of what God is or what God isn't and what he can't do. I mean, all these philosophical arguments that I appreciate and I embrace, but I clearly separate from what the plain text says.
Yeah. I hear you.
Rabbi. When I look at your system, Rabbi, it's astounding to me that you can always come back to a very sterile system. Your system is going to produce people that are robots, unhappy. I mean, I don't think that to follow a law simply because it's there is accomplishing very much. Mm-hmm. What is it accomplishing?
No, well,
because it's mystical and
it's almost like we had the thin blue line, and with Rabbi Asher we had the thin Torah line.
I disagree. I think it's liberating to think that God doesn't want to encompass every area of your thought process, that there isn't thought police, that he gives you a piece of land and he tells you to work that land and behave in such a manner that you're going to be an example to everyone else and live and enjoy your life. Now, the rabbis step in later on and control everything you do from when you wake up till you go to bed. I don't think that's initially what God wanted. Now, I do believe in part of it. I don't care what Amoraim bring to the table, but Tanaim and rabbis who existed in the Mishnah, people who actually sat on the court, I think legally they have the authority to establish consensus. I think less is more, and having to believe too many things is very dangerous because it opens the door to weird ideas that corrupt the source, which is the Torah.